Hello, friends. Welcome to the Tanis Fiber Art Podcast. I'm Tanis, host. I am a yarn dyer and a knitwear designer, and I'm coming to you live from my living room. I thought this was kind of clever. I put a picture of yarn on my frame TV so that it looks like I'm in my office, but also we're festive. Bonus points for trying. I don't know why the mat is so yellow looking, but we're not perfectionists around here. So I suspect this will be the last time that I come to you before Christmas because things are heating up. You know, the date's approaching. I've got like 12 events to go to at my kids' school. I'm only slightly exaggerating, and it's just life is so busy right now, so I don't know how much more time I'm gonna find for this, but I wanted to get in here and talk to you one last time. Also, I realize now, like, I'm so low in the frame because I wanted some yarn. Listen, I think that this has potential as like a place that I could film that isn't too messy, and that could be cute if I put different stuff on the background, like at different times. Anyway, food for thought, something I'm excited about, because the thing is, I don't have a like a regular setup where I always film, and so every time I want to film a video, I have to decide like where's the best light, where am I gonna set up today, get all my gear, get my tripod out. But also, you know, anyways, this feels like it has potential. Also, this is where I knit, is on the sofa right beside here, so it feels very familiar. It feels like I'm primed and ready to talk about knitting when I'm here. So let's talk about knitting. You know what? I'm gonna say the thing that I'm supposed to say. If you're into this, like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. It really just, I don't know what it doesn't, people are always like, it really helps the channel. Does it? I don't know what it does, but it does make me feel good. So if you want to do that, if you want to leave a comment too, I love it. I appreciate it. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about my knitting machine. I have a very basic, cheap Centro knitting machine. It's a round circular knitting machine. I bought it on Amazon. It's plastic. It's really not particularly fancy. It really only does a couple of things. I did a whole YouTube video about it 2 years ago when I bought it, and this is a little bit of a follow-up. And this is what I have to say about it. First, I'm going to put on this beautiful hat that I made with it. And this is possibly, no, I've made a few, we've made some successful hats with it. 2 of my kids wear hats that they cranked on the knitting machine as like their winter hat. That's what they love. Like, we obviously are a household that is not lacking for hand knit hats. My son dyed yarn with Chris and then cranked himself a hat, and like could not be prouder. And also that son, when he wore his hat to school 2 years ago, his teacher from the previous year, who we absolutely adored, loved the hat. Didn't know that he had made it, obviously. Why would she assume that he dyed and cranked his own hat? She didn't know, but she loved his hat, made such a big deal about it, and he was like, oh, I can make you one. And then he did, and she wore it all the time. And I guess that's my point about the Centro knitting machine, is that it's like, if she had complimented a hand knit hat, there's a chance I would have, you know, taken some time and made her a hat and gifted it to her at Christmas, because we really love this teacher. But being able to crank out a hat in, you know, under an hour on the knitting machine, and for him to really be involved in doing it as well, is pretty worth a lot to me, right? So I'm going to model a hat. Now, I went out. This hat, I did it a bit shorter. It's still got a bit of a slouch because I'm actually going to give this hat to my brother-in-law, I believe, who has a bigger head than me. He'll probably fill it out a bit more than I am. But I went out to Walmart this week and bought a bunch, where are they? Over here, of acrylic yarn, because I wanted for the kids to be able to crank a bunch of hats, and at $34 a skein, they're not using all my TFA yarn. I don't think that beautiful hand-dyed yarns is necessarily the way to go with this, because it's really gonna get pricey real fast because you can crank out hats so quickly, right? Now, for his teacher, the hat that we gifted her, it was a skein of yarn. I have the benefit of owning a yarn company, and so I have a lot of yarn that I can use for purposes like that. But for my kids and I to crank a bunch of hats to give as gifts to people who are not familiar with how to take care of wool, who aren't hand washing hats, okay, who are, you know what I mean, and also to donate. I've heard from somebody that some organizations require your donations to be machine washable, and I think somebody sent me a message saying that they even need to be acrylic in order, for them to just be like as easy as possible for people to take care of. And so I went to Walmart and bought a bunch of acrylic yarn. I think that this yarn was like, I think it was under $6. I think it was $5.50 or something. Maybe less. I bought a couple different brands, but at any rate, this much yarn, enough for more than one hat for under $5. Like that's a bargain. And it cranked up super evenly and beautifully. I'm really happy with it. This is another one. So if you do it longer, so all the hats that you crank, you can watch the video if you want a lot of details about it. But when you crank a hat, you crank a long tube, cinch both ends, stuff one end in the other, and then you have a double layered hat. So then they've both been cinched and like tied up here. Then depending on the length, like this one, we made long enough to be able to cuff the top. So you've got a nice quadruple layer really over your ears. And, it's really very cute. It's very sort of Musselburgh-esque, which is a look that's absolutely adorable. So this one, obviously, this was the first one we did because the yarn was so dynamic and exciting. The kids loved that. And then I got, a gray, which is much less exciting. But this one is specifically, it's the Bernat Premium. And it, see how even the stitches are. It seems to be the perfect yarn for the machine. So I got it in this beautiful teal color as well. We got some red yarn, and then I also got this color changing yarn, and then this fun color that my kids will like to crank to. It is satisfying. Get more than one hat per ball. It's a really fun little activity for the kids to do. And then they've got hats to gift for the people they want to gift in their life, and they feel really good about it. So I at the time that I posted, and I still I feel confident now recommending the Centro knitting machine to people with kids whose kids might enjoy cranking a hat. I think that or to people who want to make a lot of hats for donations, or for people who want to gift hats. Nobody, if you're just making it for yourself, how many of these do you need? Do you know what I mean? You kind of need to gift them to make it make sense. And an update from my first video about the Centro knitting machine is that actually I haven't used it in over a year, because last year, for the entire school year almost, I lent the machine to my son's grade 3 class. And so the entire year, it was being used by a whole bunch of 8 and 9-year-olds, and they loved it. They loved it so much that actually the teacher ended up buying her own machine for the class. So I got mine back, but it was a big success for kids around that age, and my machine is fine now. The round counter is faulty. It is not reliable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's pretty annoying, because if you knew how many rounds you needed to do exactly for a hat, you would just crank until you get to that. And you wouldn't have to be pulling it out and looking at how long it is and guesstimating if it's big enough, which is now my way of doing it. But I've read that that's pretty par for the course. I don't think that it's very possible that a year full of grade 3ers cranking it did something to throw off the balance of the counter, but also I think that they might be known for having faulty counters. I've read that somewhere. So anyways, all that to say, it did survive the year, and now I've got it back and I'm using it and it's fine. So if you're into it, it has my stamp of approval. There, let's put it that way. So moving on, I have an update on a work in progress that I showed you last week, which is a sad one because it's not working out. So I was very excited and enthusiastic about these cuddly cat socks, okay? I did the heel, and then I had just knit past the heel. They are so cute. I love the pattern. I really love the jacquard knitting style. That's really, really interesting. The pattern's well written, you know, everything's great. But I had my son, who I'm knitting them for, try it on, and he has such a high arch that the circumference between, you know, the ball of his foot to this section here that has to fit, you know, stretches over his heel and then around the top of his foot. It distorted the cats so much that here they looked great, and then up here they were really, really pulled to the max, and it just didn't look great. And it was hard for him to get the sock on and off. Like, it just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. So there's other cat sock patterns out there. I haven't frogged it yet because somebody suggested, now that I think of it, I don't think I can. Somebody suggested maybe I could turn it into mittens, but they would be upside down, the cat faces, which doesn't make sense. So I think it's just gonna end up being frogged, but I'm in no rush to frog it because I don't feel that it's, you know, it's not urgent frogging. I don't need to reclaim the yarn immediately. And I'm sad, so I'm just gonna leave it there and see what happens. I do have another work in progress that I cast on that I'm making a lot of progress on that I'm really quite excited about. And I'm gonna give you my little start, my preamble. It started with this. So this is a City Limits sweater that my daughter has been wearing for like 3 or 4 years, because we moved in 2020. And I know that I knit it in the summer of 2020. She may not have been able to wear it immediately, though. Maybe she didn't wear it that first year. So maybe she's been wearing it. Maybe she wore it too big for 1 year, and then it's been fitting. Anyway, it's getting small. Like, she can still wear it, but it's definitely, this is probably her last season. And I love this sweater. I love the fade. I just love seeing her in it. It's so bright. It's so fun. Remember, City Limits, if you're not familiar with this pattern, is reversible. So I always wear mine with purl side out. This is the side out we wear most often. And it's got that really pretty detail, the knit stitch detail that just goes down the side. And I find a fade always looks a bit smoother on the purl side as well. So if you weave your ends in carefully, you can make yourself a reversible sweater. I made this using all little bits of odds and ends of leftover sock yarn, holding 2 strands together, and then dropping one and adding another as I went. Pure joy, pure dopamine, absolutely loved it. And when I saw that I was getting too small for her, I immediately wanted to cast on another. And luckily for me, it worked out that at the time that I wanted to cast on, I also felt enthusiastic about designing a new pattern, because that doesn't always happen. And I'm gonna show you what I'm making. So, oh, the other thing I wanna mention about the City Limits pattern is the pattern includes instructions on how exactly to fade in this style, like how to calculate how long to make each section, tips on how to make it really gradual, how to make it look its best. So I'm getting, it's like all in bits and pieces, but, and God bless her, my sweet little 6-year-old, I brought her to my stash bin. I have a big Rubbermaid, like, you know, a big one, like how you would store your Halloween decorations or whatever, in the basement, full of little balls of sock yarn, like full of things like this. And they're all leftover odds and ends from other projects. And you would be shocked at how hard it is to make a dent, because it's fingering weight yarn, and fingering weight yarn just goes so far. Like, if you are going to be somebody who just collects odds and ends of yarn, fingering weight is the way to go, because it is so hard to use up. I knit a lot of socks, I knit a lot of scrappy socks. I mean, they just don't use enough yarn to make a dent. So here I'm using it 2 strands of yarn held together. She picked the palette. That's why I said God bless her. She picked the palette, and oh, did she nail it. Like, look at what she chose. I could not be happier. It is such a pretty, like, so Tanis gold through some like neon lime greens in here, some lighter mints, and then into aqua. I love it. So it's going into this, and then probably it's gonna finish dark. So it's gonna go like that. I really like gradients or fades when they're darker at the bottom. That's for some reason, like this, like, you know, light and bright at top, and then into deep dark. It's my fave. So that's what we're doing here. There's no ribbing around the collar yet, which is why it looks crazy. It hasn't been blocked yet, but it's got a little cable down the front and the back. This cable might look familiar if you've been around for a long time because it's similar to, well, I mean, it's the same as the cable on my Reverb cardigan, except for it's smaller. This is a child size. I will be knitting a version of this for myself where the cable will be probably the same size as the one in the Reverb cardigan. And I've done a new, for me, I've never designed a sweater like this before, using like a hybrid shoulder that is part saddle shoulder, part set in sleeve almost. Like, I'm really excited about the way these increases are done. And it's looking great. So I've got, the gold is sparkly, which is very exciting for her. I've got a lot of other little, she just picked a bunch of we put together a palette. We've got a bunch of little odds and ends. Some of them, I'm committed to using just these little leftover balls of yarn. And so I'm not, like, sometimes maybe the sleeves are going to be slightly different from the body. That's something you've got to be open to. Like, I've got these two balls that are not exactly the same, but very similar. So if I use one on the body and run out, I'll use this one on the sleeves to make up the difference. And that is something that I always recommend. You've got to be open to doing that. Your sleeves do not have to match your body exactly. And especially if you're working from scraps, right? That can be limiting. So be open-minded, make it fun. And also here, I don't know if you can really tell, but I added in a color right here. I did 3 rounds of a color that I was like, I think it's too high contrast. It wasn't blending with this kind of more like, aqua-y color. But I didn't want to rip it out because I didn't want to undo 3 rounds of knitting and then like divide this yarn that I've been holding together. So I just left it and then added in the color that I think is gonna work better, and it just kind of adds a little pop. There's so much kind of like action that it just really doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of people worry about that when working with fades, that it has to be, that it has to be perfect. And I feel like the imperfections are what really add to the fades to a degree. Don't overthink it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's a pattern that I'm currently sinking my teeth into, that I'm bringing me a lot of joy this pre-holiday season. And I don't know if I'm going to do mine in a fade. I have another color. I'm really into working from my stash at the moment. And I have a sweater quantity of yarn that I had saved from sort of a one-of-a-kind update. It was one color that I didn't really like, so then we dyed it another color and added speckles. And when it came out, I absolutely loved it. Like, I love it so much that I saved it. And I might use that instead. It's worsted weight. And so I might use that for mine. Or I might do a fade, I'm not sure. I've got time to think about it. Then the last thing, guys, that I wanted to talk about today is this. This is a yarn called Checklist. It's the 4-ply sock from Gauge Dye Works. And it was a yarn that she dyed possibly last year. Maybe it was a 2023 thing. And it's like each different color represents a different bird for bird watching. So Checklist is like, you're bird watching and you're checking the birds off your list as you see them. And I love the colors, and I'm gonna knit a pair of socks for Chris with this. And I think this will be my holiday cast on. This is not new to me yarn. I've had this in my stash for at least a year, I think. So I'm excited to use it. Also, I pulled it out because I just ordered 3 skeins of yarn from Gauge Dye Works. She has an update currently going on for her flower of the month, your birth flower. You know how every month has a flower associated, like every month has a stone for your birthday, your birthstone, your birth flower. It's probably like a birth bird as well. There's probably everything. And so she did a different colorway to represent each flower for every month. And she just released them all as a pre-order right now. And I am April, and I love the April tulips colorway that she did. Is so good. And then I ordered 2 others, but I know what they look like, but I don't remember what months they were. Maybe July. I ordered July, I think, and then one other month that is gorgeous. So I'm very excited to get those, but also it's like, I'm gonna use the Gauge Dye Works yarn to make up some room in my stash for the 3 Gauge Dye Works colorways that are coming. So this will be a very fun little cast on for me. And I'm wearing today my Lakes V by Ozetta. I've talked about this in like every video recently. Last week I spoke about it as an FO for the first time, and I feel like I spoke about it a little bit lukewarmly, and I'm here to take that back because I'm wearing it today. And the reason I was kind of lukewarm about it was twofold. One, it does upset me that it doesn't look as good in videos as it does in pictures or in person. If I just talk to you like this, you get the full impression of it. Like from far, it just looks black and white. It is not. It is gorgeous. And look, doesn't this necklace look like it was made for it? Anyway, so that was one thing I think that just as I was holding it up, I was lacking enthusiasm because it doesn't look as good from far in video. In person, it looks great. And then the other thing was, I was like, it's just so big. And it's how it's designed to be. It fits me as intended. And it's the first thing that I've made out of like a bulky yarn that has really, it doesn't look that wide now when I'm looking at it, but quite wide, like my armpit's here, right? So quite a wide sleeve, a wide body. It's bulkier, when you're putting it under a jacket. The day that I finished it, I put it on and I was, doing the dishes, and like, you can't really just push the sleeves up. They fall back down. So, it's a different kind of thing for me where I work from home. I'm constantly doing dishes, constantly doing stuff with my hands, like being enveloped in wool like this. I'd like to be able to push my sleeves up. But I've come around 100%. I wore it today, threw a jacket over it, went for a walk, and I was fine. Like, you got to adjust yourself a little bit to get your jacket on, but it was not that big of a deal. It is not a deal breaker. And then also, if I've got a ton of dishes to do, I'll take the sweater off so I don't have to fight with the sleeves. Like, this is life. These are the things we have to learn to live with. And so I am now completely enamored by my sweater. It does fill a hole in my wardrobe that I did not know I had for something really oversized and bulky like this. It's the type of thing, because I don't really buy ready to wear sweaters because I knit so many sweaters. I feel like it's the type of thing I would buy, I'd be drawn to in a store. So I'm happy to have it and to have made it. And I recommend it. And so with that, I think I've covered the things that I wanted to talk about today. I have these two skeins of yarn here, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because I might use them in my daughter's sweater, even though I just said I'm trying not to break into skeins that aren't already partially used. But these are leftover minis. I think they don't count. Right? So thank you very much for watching. Yeah, I hope you like and subscribed if you made it to the end. And I hope you like my festive setup. And I'll see you again next time.